Well, hey there, kids, and welcome to another episode of Learn BMX Racing. This episode is all about reviewing Apple Valley BMX in Apple Valley, California. So for those of you who have never been here, the first thing we're going to cover is exactly how to get here. So looking at our map, we will zoom in to Southern California. Apple Valley BMX Moto Track is located in Apple Valley, just north of San Bernardino, a little northeast of Los Angeles, and east of Palmdale up in the high desert. So getting here, if you're coming from the north or the south, you're going to be on the 15 at some point. And if you're coming from the east or the west, well, then you're probably going to be on the 18 at some point. So if you're coming up from the south, you might want to cut over here on Bear Valley Road, and you can take that all the way over, or you would come down the 18. Either route, you kind of have to go through the city a bit, so there's going to be a number of traffic lights. It's not right next to the highway. And then if you're coming from out east, obviously you just take the 18 all the way in. So if we come in here a little bit closer, you can see that it is part of Horseman's Center Park, which is the equestrian center for Apple Valley. So whether you're coming from the north or the south on the 18, you can see right here, the track is kind of located in this sort of back corner of the Horseman Center. So if we zoom in here and kind of look at the 3D view, you can see that the track is sort of nestled in this sort of alcove of the mountains. So it's a really cool location. It's a lot of beautiful scenery. And if we zoom in here to check out the street view, you can see what the driveway looks like as you're coming into Apple Valley BMX. So right here is the sign for the track, and then right here is the sign for the Horseman Center. So you just drive right on up this road, and if you look out this way, you can see it's just sort of the wide open valley, and then you have the mountain over on this side. So you're going to want to kind of stick to the right as you're pulling into this parking lot. You can see here that the road kind of comes up, you go through this fence, and then you go, well, that's a left, obviously. Don't go right here as soon as you get in, because that's just a big empty field. But you come through the fence, and then you make a bunch of right-hand turns. So the road splits into a Y, you stick to the right, and then this first driveway right here, which is a gravel kind of road, you come up that, and then that puts you right in the parking lot of Apple Valley BMX. This gives you a really good view of the parking lot very early in the day. Normally that whole center area will start to get filled up with cars. Now, as you can see over on the left-hand side of the screen, that right there is the Clubhouse and the sign-up booth. And the sign-up booth is the door that is closer to you, and then the door in the back is labeled for the snack bar area. Inside the sign-up booth, the lovely Melissa Hammonds will take your hard-earned money so that you can have a fun day of racing or practicing at the track. And if you walk down the hallway right here, that takes you into the snack bar area. And like most BMX clubhouses, they have a nice little trophy case. You'll also notice a lot of Supercross BMX stickers, because Apple Valley is actually the home track of Supercross. And they have the typical candy and popcorn and things like that for sale. Really good donuts. And during the summer, they'll typically have the grill going and have cheeseburgers, hamburgers, hot dogs, and all of those sort of delicious things for you to have at the snack bar. If you're brand new to BMX, you don't have a helmet, they have helmets that you can use. Have a little supply of them right there. They have all kinds of cool memorabilia stuck up on the walls. One of my personal favorites is the sign right here. Before you complain, ask me how you can volunteer. That kind of says it all, right? Don't complain about the BMX track unless you're willing to do some work to help out. And here we got a whole bunch of, things like signed stuff. There's a number plate from Brooke Crane. There's an old Supercross ad. And down here is a Fly Racing poster with a whole bunch of signatures on it. And here's another copy of that. There's a lot of cool signed posters like this one. Donnie Robinson, he won the bronze medal, I believe it was, in the first BMX Olympics. Elise Post, of course, the famous Elise Post, who won silver at the 2016 Olympics. And my personal favorite, Brooke Crane, the girl who really inspired me to start racing. So it's really cool to see all of those posters hanging up in the clubhouse. Now right here we can see a whole bunch of ads that are just advertising the race nights. Melissa, the track operator, also happens to be an experienced graphic designer, so she is the one who designs all the promotional ads for the track. And right here we see another poster that I really like. There's Martin Aparijo doing a bar endo. And then, of course, we have the signage of rules for the tracks. There's also copies of the rules that are outside. And one of the signs that I like the most is this one right behind the podium that actually has the hours of the track posted as well. So that's kind of a cool thing to have. Speaking of having the barbecue, it's usually done right out here on the deck outside of the snack bar. And this is a good spot to kind of stand and get an overall view of the facility. So we can see the parking lot here right in front of us. And as we come over to the left, you can see the bleachers where the parents will tend to sit to watch the race. You can see the start hill. You can see a picnic bench we got there. You can get a pretty good view of the first straight from this angle. And as we come over further to the left, you can start to see where all the riders circle back from the finish line to come back up the start hill again. Now, if you see right in pretty much the center of the frame behind that shed, you see that flagpole. We have two dedication plaques under the flagpole. One is R. Johnson Arena. I have no idea what that means. I think it might mean Athletic Recreation Director, but I'm not sure. And I don't know who this Johnson fellow or madam was. But this plaque, dedicated to Maury Jones, he was actually a member of the Optimist Club in Apple Valley. And the Optimist Club is the organization which helped to get the track made. Speaking of the flagpole, if you got to take a pee, that's where the porta potty is located, right next to the flagpole. So you can see that's kind of to the left of the bleachers, so you get an idea of where that's at in relation to everything else. Now, when you're going to race, the moto board is right here at the bottom of the start hill, and it's kind of to the right-hand side of the bleachers. And if you need to put your bike somewhere, there are a good number of bike racks all around the facility. There's this bike rack right here, which is on the right side of the bleachers. There's another bike rack right here that's more to the left side of the bleachers. And then there's a third bike rack right there in front of the sign-up booth. Speaking of the bleachers, let's take a look at some of the places where folks can sit and watch the races. So we have the bleachers and a few picnic tables that are right here in front of the first straight. So it gives a good view of the starting gate and the first straight into the first turn. Here's the observation tower, which is around the back side of the first turn, and you can walk up there and stand on the observation tower. And here is a view of the track from the observation tower. So as you can see, the first straight is in plain view. You can get a really good shot of the first turn, the second straight, the second turn. I mean, you can see really everything from up here. Like this back section of the track, you really can't see that if you're in the bleachers, but you can see it really clearly when you're up here on the observation deck, all the way to the finish line with this moto that was won by Bella Hammonds. The top of the observation tower is also a great location to be able to see the balance bike track. The balance bike track at Apple Valley is very popular, and there's always a ton of little kids here practicing their skills, learning how to become better bike riders, and there's also a nice set of bleachers at the balance bike track for the parents to watch the races. So let's start to take a look at the track itself. So here you can see some of the sponsors that are listed underneath the starting gate.
Okay, riders, random start. Riders ready, watch the gate.
Speaking of the starting gate, let's take a look at a few starts. This is from the starting booth itself, and here are a variety of other angles.
Riders ready, watch the gate.
I saw he had an avian fork. I really wanted that rifle.
Okay, riders, random start. Riders ready, watch the gate. Okay, riders, random start. Riders ready, watch the gate.
This is actually my very first lap with my new action camera. So we're coming down the first straight. We're coming up the crazy double that comes into the first turn. And then we whip around into the second straight. And I'm going really slow through all this, mainly because I was so nervous and I really did not want to drop my brand new camera. So I'm taking it real easy on this lap, but we come over that little triple into the third turn, which leads into the rhythm section. This is a very, very tight rhythm section, and it's one that you really have to get used to. You can see, like I said, I'm going really slow because I didn't want to drop the camera. I can go a lot faster than that through the rhythm when I need to. And here's the last turn, and we whip around into the final straight over that tabletop and crossing the finish line right about there. So there you go, first lap with the new camera. Here I'd like to give you a better tour of the track from a different kind of angle, from a more POV sort of angle. So here as we come into the gate, there's this kind of little lip that leads up into the gate, which is a little strange. It's not something I've seen at any other track, so it's just something you got to kind of pay attention to. You know, don't just like try to rush up to the gate because you'll slam into that lip. So coming down the first straight, if you're not familiar with Apple, this can be kind of intimidating because it's a pretty steep hill and that first jump looks kind of scary, but this is the one right there that really freaks people out and can kind of launch you if you're not ready for it. So this straight, really cool. Nothing unusual there. That turn is really good. This straight, the third, is also really good. Nice and smooth. The triple that leads into this turn is a little weird, and that turn's a little chunky. It's a little bumpy. This rhythm section is very, very tight. It's a little bit awkward in terms of the spacing. This turn is really good, and this last straight is also pretty good. So that's sort of a very quick overview. It's difficult. It's difficult to talk and give a lot of detail as everything's whipping by so fast. But that's a good general overview of what the track is like. Speaking of the dangers of the jump going into the first turn, keep your eye on the little girl here in yellow and hear her scream. That makes me laugh every time. Okay, so this is a really cool lap to have because this was actually the second moto that I did at Apple in the new 2020 season. And watch the guy right next to me. Oh, you see, he caught a little bit of air off of that jump too. Like I said, if you're not ready for it, that thing will launch you every single time. So that's something you really gotta look out for. If you're not ready to just send it over that jump, you better know how to keep both wheels on the ground. So I actually came in second in this moto, and this was a 1-2 to main, and the guy who transferred out in the first moto is not in here, but yeah, I think I did pretty decent in this one.
Watch the gate.
36-40.
So I'm going backwards here, but this is actually the first moto of the race that I just showed you the second moto for. So in this moto, I finish third. As you can see, the guys in front of me, I mean, they just took off. I mean, they are allegedly novices, but I think they're old school guys who are coming back into it. Another one of the guys was actually, he's a pretty experienced mountain biker. So, yeah, they really took off. But I didn't do too bad, came in third. I'm happy with that. And, it was a fun race. I definitely had a good time doing this one.
Over the years that Apple Valley has been around, there have been a number of different track operators. These days, the family that takes care of Apple Valley BMX are the Hammonds.
Heath and Melissa, along with their children, Annabella and Holden. Here is what Melissa has to say
about taking care of this track.
Okay, I'm Melissa Hammonds, and I'm the track operator here at Apple Valley BMX. And I've run the track for about 5 years. The track is owned by Supercross, and so my daughter rides for Supercross, and I was volunteer, and I just ended up that I took it over. We are open, currently we're open Tuesdays and Saturday mornings, but during the summertime, once the time changes, we go to Friday nights, Tuesdays, 5:30 to 7 sign-ups, and then we race, and we try and kind of just get right out of here, so we don't stay out late during the week, especially when the kids got to go to school. So,
and I say, if we're going to be schooling the kids at Apple Valley, let's teach them a little history about the BMX track. Apple Valley is a track that changes the layout very, very frequently. Ever since this track has been around, they change probably every 2 years or so. So if we use the historical imagery here and we go back in time, we can see right here in 2017, track was pretty much the same as it is in 2020. Here you can see 2016, it was quite different. The Strider track was located right here instead of being over in this spot. And this kind of last, or not last turn, but the second last turn, the third turn, is a little bit wider, and this part really spreads out a little bit more. Here we come back to 2015. You can see they actually had two Strider tracks. There's one right here in the middle, one over here. This observation tower was moved because right now it's located in this spot. So this is pretty darn different. If we come back to, say, 2009, you can see, again, very different layout. And if we come back to 2007, extremely different. It went straight, curved just a little bit this way, and then it kind of tucked all into itself. And the exit was actually
here on the southern side of the track instead of the northern side. So yeah, it's a track that changes a lot, and it changes very frequently, which is pretty cool and is a nice thing if you're getting bored with the track. Just wait a year or two and it will be completely different. But yeah, the 2013 version of the track, you can see how wide this first turn was. I don't believe it's that wide today. Yeah, it's a lot it's a lot smaller today than it was back then. But it's kind of cool to see how the track has evolved and changed over the years.
So while we're taking the time to look at the map, why don't we check out how long the track is? So we'll come in here and use the measuring tool and go around every straight, every corner, and get a good idea of the length of Apple Valley BMX track. So here we're coming down the second last straight, coming into the last turn, and finally cross the finish line, which is right here. So there you go. As you can see, Apple Valley BMX is approximately 1,077 feet long. Of course, that number will vary a little bit depending if you're taking the inside or the outside of turns, but that should be a pretty close approximation. 1,077 feet.
Riders ready, watch the gate.
Let's take a leisurely walking tour of the track. So the first hill, yes, very intimidating. If this is your first time, if you're a new rider, it's going to kind of freak you out. So don't be embarrassed to use your brakes. In fact, you're encouraged to use your brakes on this first hill. Now, when you come down to this first jump, you can see it's kind of it's almost like a step down sort of jump, and that is the one that seems very scary if it's your first time. But this is the jump that will throw you, right? Is this double heading into this first turn. So what happens is people come down the start hill. They're scared of that first jump. They see that it's really not a big deal, and then they start to pick up their speed, not realizing that this jump is the one that's a lot more dangerous. So make sure that you slow down before you get to that. As you come through this first turn, it's like a lot of first turns on a lot of tracks. It's pretty wide. It's pretty easy to handle that one. Now the second straight, as we're coming up this way, really only has one set of jumps. It has this triple right here. And this second straight is pretty darn short, so that's really all that fits. I've seen some expert riders actually clear the entire triple, which is really cool to see. It's very impressive. And then you come into this second turn, and this is really just kind of a sweep of 90 degrees. It's not a full 180 degree turn. So once you get into this, you can see here that the track is a lot skinnier than it was at the beginning. And this is an unusual series of jumps because it's kind of a double, but it's also kind of a tabletop because the length between the jumps is so wide. So there was that first one we passed, and this second is the same thing. It's a double technically, but it's also almost a tabletop because the length of the deck between the jumps is really long. And then we come into some flat bottom area, and then we come right here into a triple, which is kind of a step up triple at the end. And the last jump is basically higher than the first two. This, the third turn, sweeps around and brings us into the rhythm section. And again, this rhythm section is a little unusual, and in just a moment here we'll see rider Jenna comes through right about there. There she is. You can always spot Jenna because of her loud freewheel. And this rhythm section is a little unusual. I kind of like it because of that. It's a bit challenging to ride. It's challenging to get used to, and as a result, I think, that just improves your skills. Then right here, we have a little tabletop at the very end of the rhythm section, and that leads us into the final turn. And the final turn is pretty tight. It's probably the tightest of all the turns. And that sweeps us right back into the final straight, where we first hit a tabletop right here. This one now is a true tabletop. It's completely flat across the top, and then that drops us out into a little flat area, which brings us into, I would say, this is really a roller followed by a double, right? So there was that roller, little double, and then that's it. And that's pretty much the end. Here we have the finish line, and that is the end of Apple Valley Track. Without question, Apple Valley is one of the most beautiful and picturesque tracks in all of Southern California, if not the nation. Framed by the mountains and the epic expanse of the valley, there is nothing else quite like it. Knowing the place has been here for 40 years makes me think of racers who started here when they were 10, and now they bring their own children to the track. I pray the beauty of this place continues to endure for generations, and 40 years from now, the children racing today will bring their own kids back to Apple Valley BMX.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Learn BMX Racing. I hope you now know a heck of a lot about Apple Valley BMX, and someday I'll see you out here at the track. And remember, kids, your good old days are happening right now.
Hold my hand, tell me everything, I'll understand.